If I had a father, well, maybe if I had a father, I'd know what to say to that. I know what not having a father has taught me. And you know what that is? Not being dependent on anyone. It's weird. That saying, blood runs thick. I asked myself, how is this possible in my case? I've only spent a year and a half with my father as a child, from like the time I was 8 to almost 10, like 9.5. And that was in California, which is where I'm originally born. I've turned out almost 100% like him. Now, you say, well, how's that? Let me put a little emphasis on that. From the time I was 12 years old, I had an image burned in my head that my father was a woman beater. Little did I know that was going to lead to years and years of ongoing issues, father issues. Just the fact that he being absent. But hearing all those stories that I should have never known about my father, that made me discredit a man that I never even knew. Now, I would hear these stories from my mother, how my father would tie her up and he would beat her and force her to have intercourse, when she wasn't, in the mood, or like they get in arguing or whatever. Stories of how when she was 7 months pregnant, she was thrown into a brick wall that almost caused her to lose me, all because she was tired of walking. Their vehicle broke down and they had to walk from point A to point B. I don't know the full story, just the things that I was told and the things I remember. And he had got upset because she was tired of walking and complaining about it, how she put it. And he threw her against a brick wall, and the way she described it was horrendous. It you know, it bothered me. Okay. So I guess those things went on because I don't know if you're familiar with abusive relationships. A lot of times the abused person will stay out of fear, out of rejection from someone else, all the things that abusive person have put in their head. So they tend to stay, and they'll even defend that person like to extremes. Now, as I said, all this went on for quite some time because of those reasons. Actually, it went on until my father had a motorcycle accident, and he had woke up from a 3-month coma, and he looked my mother dead in the eyes and told her, God spoke to me in my dreams and told me that if I don't let you go, that I'm going to kill you. So that's how they end up finally splitting. He finally let her go. Now, mind you, this is back in the 80s. It's a different time, Cops were a lot different. Just everything was a lot different. There was the fear that my mother had. I don't know what was going through her mind, why she didn't leave. I can only speak from my own experiences and things I've seen. It's really hard to tell. I grew up knowing what a horrible, horrible man my father was. I never actually witnessed him putting his hands on my mother because they had split when I was just real little. I think I was like 1 or 2 years old. However, I watched my stepdads and supposed stepfathers, whatever they were supposed to be. I've watched many of them put hands on my mother. One of which I remember very vaguely because he also put hands on me as well. And it was my stepdad, which is my brother. I have 2 brothers, a younger and an older. I'm the middle child. It was my younger brother's dad. and he would abuse me. He would abuse my mother. I don't know why. That was her thing. I don't know. Those abusive men. That's where she always ended up. Oh, this man was abusing me too, and from my understanding is because he didn't like my father. I don't know exactly how he knew my father. And, the relationship with my mother, I just know that he took out his anger on me. He would do things like, it's hard to speak on it. I'm not going to get teary eyed or nothing, but I've made peace with this. God rest his soul. That man has passed away. He actually just passed away within the last few years. And my brother was in prison when it happened. I kind of feel bad for him, but it is what it is. That man, he was a horrible man. He was a biker for the Sons of Silence. He was just a mean, all around mean guy. And like I would wake up screaming because I had nightmares. Or I have nightmares of him. He'd come in my room in the middle of the night and he would put pepper down my throat, try and make me choke. He would put a pillow over my face and like smother me to where I was, gasping and then let it up. He would, those nights that I would wake up, if he wouldn't hear me screaming, I'd run into the bedroom to sleep with my mother and him. No, it was my mother, not him, but I had to sleep with him. And I would try to sleep on her side, but no, he always made me sleep in the middle. And he's a big guy. He was a very big man, and he would deliberately squash me, in between us, lay on top of me. It was, all little boys piss on toilet seats, right? Till they learn not to. I don't remember if I actually had to, but I can remember a memory in about, it's like it's probably one of, I know it is, and I'm not gonna say probably because I've been diagnosed with PTSD and I have flashbacks, but I can remember, like, I close my eyes, I can see it like plain as freaking day. I was in the bathroom in a trailer. I know exactly where the trailer's at, every place. I just, all those memories are literally burned in my head. So I just can't forget it. I've tried. They are trauma. It's trauma. Only thing to do is, manage it. So I have a distinct memory where he was trying to force me to lick pee off the toilet seat that I had pissed on the toilet seat. I remember my mom trying to stop him, and I really don't remember. Maybe that's the part I just blocked out, for my own sake. I really don't remember, but I remember that argument and my mother trying to stop him. I think a few instances like that, my mother had finally caught on to it, and that was enough for her to leave him. It wasn't enough for her to leave him because he was beating her, which I'm glad that when he started to put his hands on me and she found out about it, that she left him. But I can remember it was DCFS or Department of Children and Family Services, whatever you want to call it in your area. It's DCFS here. I remember going in a room and like using two dolls that like looked like people, and I had to show them like to the best of my knowledge of what he had done to me and try to explain to him. Next thing I know, we ended up in what my mother said, which is called, a home for battered women. I don't know. We stayed like that for, I really don't know. I was really young. I was probably like 6 years old, because when I was 8 is when I went and seen my father for the first time. So I have memories all the way back to at least somewhere between 5. Yeah, at least 5 years, 5 and 6 years of age. I have memories that far back. It's because, like I said, it was all traumatic things. After we got out of that, the battered home, things started to progress for us, but kind of flopped around a lot. My mother still in and out of relationships that weren't good. It was toxic. It's so messed up because, she's told me, you're just like your father. I never even knew my father. What I do know is I know her. And I hate to say it, but I'm just like her. Exactly. I may have had my father's temper and his abusive ways, but I believe those developed because of the things that I endured as a child that she had put me through. I hate to talk about my mother like this, but it is what it is. I respect my mother. I always respect my mother. I always love my mother, even though we're not on talking terms right now. And that's a whole nother story. Just like that whole process after we got out of the battered homes. And then I went and lived with my father for like a year and a half. And my mother suddenly showed up on my dad's doorstep and whisked me back home, which I was so thankful because my dad was not the best man. He had his own construction business, but he cared about drugs and women, and he just didn't have his shit together. That's what little bit I remember. He would never beat me, never put his hands on me. He was the type of man that would ground me. He was very stern. I remember, the multiplications table, the 1 times 1 all the way up to 12 and 12 times 12. He would make me, because math was a poor subject, he would make me do that like every day after school, write that entire freaking mathematician table out. Oh man, he never hit me, but he would kick me in the ass with the steel toe boots whenever I did something wrong. I only met my father twice my entire life. That time, let's say 3 times. That time when I was 8, I met him when I just got out of jail for my son's 2nd birthday. And then it was only for like a few weeks. And I met him another time when I actually took a visit to California in 2012 and seen him then. So I was only there for like a week. So, I do not know my father. But from what I've seen, he's very angry, very bitter man. He's angry at the world. We talk sometimes on the phone, but actually, I haven't talked to him a little over a year. Like, he doesn't ever reach out to me, and it just kind of gets draining where I'm always reaching out to him. It's a whole nother subject. I wish he would have been there when I needed him most, because maybe I wouldn't have failed as many times as I did. But hey, to each their own, right? So, anyways, back on that subject where my mother and we went through all that crap. She still was going back and forth to men. Obviously, didn't care enough about the effect it had on me because I was the only child. She had her oldest son. He lived with his dad. The youngest son lived with his dad, which was the abusive father. Which my younger brother, and the older father was abusive too. I didn't know him. I didn't know nothing really of that story. Just know he was abusive. All men were abusive to my mother. I'm not discrediting that. Like, there's a fucking pattern here. So all that crap went on and on and on. My mother, frequenting those relationships. I even brought some water with me. So, anyways, 14 years old, come along. My mother had the great idea. She asked me, hold on, check, make sure it's still recording. I'm about out of time on this. All right, I still got time. My mother had the bright idea that she was gonna once again get with another man. This time the man wasn't abusive. Seemed great. But here's the thing. I wasn't about that. I was starting to become more independent. I was 14 years old. I didn't like the idea of another stepfather coming into my life. And on top of that, he had 2 other kids that were, my age, but I didn't have a room. I would have been sleeping on the couch. So her offer was, it was great. I loved it. But again, I lacked guidance because I didn't have a father, and then I didn't have a mother either. Her offer was, you continue to stay in school and graduate, I will get you your own place. Starting now, I will get you your own place. I will pay all your bills. I will keep everything you need to survive until you graduate, and I'll give you time. I want you to get your own job. I was like, what? Yeah. 14-year-old, having my own house, so on and so forth. Yeah, I was down for that. Like I said, I didn't want another dad. I didn't need another part-timer. I didn't need another guy to tell me what to do that I didn't even want to trust in the first place, you know? There's no way I was going to trust this man. After all the things that happened to me and my mother in the past, no, ain't happening. And I was stubborn like that, and she knew it. That's why she had that offer. And I'm glad she did. Because that's where, my skills of learning to become a man had developed. She certainly wasn't going to teach me. So, despite not knowing my father, let me make sure this thing's still on. Despite not knowing my father, I've acquired, some meaningful skills. I've learned to be a man. And the other thing that's weird on top of that is I have, like, many of his skills. He was good with his hands. He owned his own construction business. And I even have some of his physical attributes. Like, when I laugh, I can hear myself out. Like, I laugh just like him. When I write in small, tiny little capital letters, just like he does. And lastly, the one thing that I said I never would be was just like him, and that's an abusive spouse. And if you watch any of my previous, like, go back and watch some of my older videos, I'll explain that part and how I overcome that. But I end up turning into that abusive spouse. Maybe if I had a positive role model, I wouldn't be, I wouldn't have been a woman beater, a 2-time felon, a drug addict. And most importantly, I wouldn't have been non-existent in 2 of my kids' life. Now, despite all this, I still managed to, own it all. Every freaking bit of it, I overcome my abusive ways. It's been around somewhere between 6 and 8 years now. I am a business owner. I have this freaking awesome car I'm sitting in right now, a Dodge Challenger with the Hemi. I am 22 years clean from methamphetamines. So, you know what? My father's absence taught me how to become the man that I was destined to be. I really can't help but to wonder what it had been like to have that lending ear, that stern yet loving discipline, that kick in the ass when I needed it most. Wow. I had to learn to be a man all on my own. And I made some horrible mistakes along the way. Horrible. But here's the thing. Those experiences made me who I am today. Honestly, I am happy with that person I am today. I have some regrets, and people say not to look at it like that, but I'm trying to still fix those things because I have some things that I need to repair, which revolves around my 2 children. That the marriage I was in, you'd have to go watch another video. I don't even know if I even explain it. Yeah, I partially do. But anyways, I was in a marriage, and I was abusive. It was a very toxic marriage for both of us. And, when we split up, she got the kids, and, I've they moved clear away. They moved to Alaska. And now just this year, they moved to Texas. Alaska. I live in Illinois. Freaking far. I only got to see them twice a year. So, yeah, I was non-existent. Not by my choice, but I was non-existent. And it was detrimental to our relationship. But, I still have time to fix that with my kids. I still have plenty of time to fix that. And I'm going to fix that. So with that being said, I'm going to wrap this up, guys. I don't really have much else to say about it. It is what it is. I was dealt a hand, and I played it. Plain and simple. I played it the best way I could. All right, guys. This is Chris, and I want you to always remember it's never too late to make a better tomorrow. I'm a perfect example of that. And don't stop chasing your dreams. All right, guys, I'm out. Please like and subscribe.